Hey Sugar Snaps, welcome to the Textile Indie YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Brittany. Here on YouTube, I share inspiration and tutorials in fiber and textile arts. Kromski gifted me their Sonata spinning wheel, and I wanted to share a unboxing, a setup tutorial, a setup for spinning tutorial, and share a couple other tips using the Sonata wheel. So let's dive into some anatomy, some setup, some spinning tutorial, and some other goodies about the Kromski Sonata wheel. I've already taken everything out of the box and put it into the backpack. So I wanted to show you this first because it's really cool and it's probably one of my favorite parts of this wheel. This wheel fits into this backpack. It has two back straps and they're adjustable so you can carry it around, as well as these tote handles up on top, which means that you can carry it around. And I was joking with Bailey that we need to tote this down to the local park so that I can spin this summer at the park, which I'm probably definitely going to do. She's a little embarrassed by the fact, so we'll see if she goes along with me or not. But okay, I'm gonna open this guy, and first off, there's a little handbook that comes along with it, which is really handy. Goes over the wheel. This is the Sonata wheel that I'll be showing you from Kromski, and it has this nice little sleeve inside of it where the mother of all lives. So this guy, this is where the flyer will sit, and it's nicely protected in this sleeve. And then the wheel itself comes together looking like this. Ta-da! So the wheel and the foot pedals are attached. The drive band is in there, and I'm going to set this here. It is pretty heavy. The whole situation in the backpack and everything is about 16 pounds. So the wheel is obviously the heaviest part. Then I have the flyer. This is what sits inside the mother of all. And inside the body of the backpack, there are a couple different pockets for storing things, and there's two pieces of foam in the base of the bag so that the wheel can sit propped up on those foam pieces, and it will protect them. So the bottom is nice and supported, and you're not going to dink up the bottom of your wheel because it has that insert inside. And then on the outside, you can store your bobbins and your toolkit and your repair kit and all of those sort of things. Kromski also sent me a few goodies. I have this Nitty Knotty in their orange color. Put this together. Nitty Knotty is super handy because once you've spun your yarn and plied it, or you're ready to skein it up, once you're done, you'll use a Nitty Knotty to create your skein. And this is a really cute little version for small skeins. You set it up like this so that the two pieces are going in the opposite direction, and then you can skein up your yarn on this little guy. This is really cute. Next up, I have the walnut bobbins. These are the same color as the wheel. And then Kromski is also exploring colorful wheels, which is fun. So they have this corally color and then this blue turquoisey color. So I received those as well. Then they also have their wheel oil and the hex wrench. The wheel oil comes in this cute little pen, and it has a cap so that you can make sure it doesn't leak, with the tip cover, and a nice thin application needle, which is super handy for getting into the tight spots. So that's really nice to have when you're getting set up, especially because there can be some extra squeaks you want to work out. Little Kromski label, sticky on wood. The knobs for tension turning on the wheel, another screw knob, the spinning hook. When you need to grab your leader yarn but it's disappeared into your wheel because it slipped or it broke, you have a little hook that you can go in and grab that with. 2 metal rods for the Lazy Kate, some hooks, springs, and twine for the tension, and another knob for the wheel. Now let's go over taking all the different parts for the wheel and putting them together so you have your wheel all set up and ready to go. I've set it down on the floor with the treadle side down, so that means I can lift this guy up and the treadles are on the ground. So I'm going to rotate this around because the first thing I want to do is put the knob in right in here, so there's a hole where this bar and the wheel attach. So the longer of the 2 knobs with the screw length, there's 2 pieces here, a longer one and a shorter one. I want to take the longer one, insert that in this hole, and screw this in to secure the wheel upright. Screw that nice and tight. So then the drive band here, I can untangle this and kind of get this propped up on the wheel. We still need to put the mother of all up and everything, but get that out of the way. So then we're ready to insert the mother of all. For the mother of all, we're going to insert this into the hole on the top of the wheel here. There's a space there, insert that. And you want the piece that's closed, that has the wider opening, towards the treadles. And the piece that has the hook that the flyer is going to fit in right here, that's going to be away. So line that up so that it's pointing straight at you if you were sitting on the wheel. And then take the shorter knob with the screw end and screw this into the hole on the side of this support bar until it holds the mother of all nice and tight. So you can tighten it down and then the mother of all won't move. And then we can take the flyer. You're going to take a bobbin, and the bobbin is going to go on the flyer, but there's 2 ends to your bobbins for the Kromski Sonata. So you have the wider side and a slightly smaller side. The smaller side you want to place on first so that it fits closest to the orifice hole and the end of the flyer. And then you can tuck this into the front hole and snap it in to the back so that it sits in the mother of all like so. And now the pieces of your wheel are installed. We're ready to set up the tension and the tension knobs. In your brake band kit, you have a tension knob. This is your Scotch tension knob. You have a piece of twine with a spring that has 2 loops on either side, and then you have 3 hooks, 2 that are closed eye hooks and 1 that's an open eye hook. So take one of the closed eye hooks, that's one that doesn't have any space in the loop. We're going to install this hook right here. There's a little pre-drilled hole. So if you're looking at your wheel with the treadles facing you, this is the left-hand side. I'm going to insert this in by just hand tightening it in place. And you want it to be flat so that it sits parallel to the floor like so. And then we're going to loop this end of the spring. So the one end has the twine tied to it. The other end we're going to loop around our hook. So loop that on, get that on there so that the hook is hanging out inside. So get that wire on there and then feed it around until it's nice and tight on there, like so. And it can move around freely. And now you're going to take your other eye, the one that has the opening, and we're going to insert this in to the other hole on the other side. So I'll flip the wheel around here. On this, in this hole right here, on the right side of the wheel, I'm going to tighten this up, and I want the opening of the hook towards the back of the wheel. So I'll hand tighten this until the opening is towards the back. We have two hooks on either side of the mother of all here. We've got one here with the spring attached and the twine coming from it on the left side, and then on the right side we have the open eye hook, and that is with the opening towards the back of the wheel, like so. Now we have this Scotch tension knob that we're going to be inserting into this hole right here, and this will be where we do our adjusting for the tension on the wheel. To do that, we need to take this twine, loop it over the groove in the bobbin like so, catch the hook like that, bring this towards the Scotch tension knob like this, and then there's a hole in the Scotch tension knob right there. We're going to thread the end of this twine through, tie it onto this section of the knob, and then take the excess twine and wrap it around this part of the knob. So I'm going to get this end through the hole, which can be a little bit tricky because the jute wants to rub against the wood. Tie this onto the end so that it sits in the groove on the knob. I'm just doing a square knot, which is right over left and then left over right. And then insert this into the hole and start to tighten it in the direction that feels most comfortable. So you can also come in and just wrap this around like so. I have an extra long piece because I didn't cut it. You can trim it down if you like, but I like to have the extra length just in case I need to make adjustments later. And then I'll insert the knob nice and tight into that space, and then I can make my adjustments like so. And now I can make any adjustments by twisting this in the space. You can get it in there tight so that it doesn't shift on you or slide. You don't want to overextend the spring over here too much, so this spring shouldn't be pulling too hard as you are setting up your wheel. So that is your brake band Scotch tension setup. The next thing I want to show you is the built-in Lazy Kate system, which is really cool. This allows you both to carry empty bobbins and to ply your two plies from your wheel. So instead of having to have a separate Lazy Kate, this is built in. So you have these two metal pegs. These insert at an angle into these holes. So you might need two hands. I'm trying to do this one-handed. Might need two hands to get that inserted in nice and snugly, like so. And then you can put your bobbins and store them right on top. And now you have two bobbins ready to go, or if these were full bobbins, you could ply from here. Now the last thing to do on your wheel is to set up the drive band, and this guy's already set up mostly on mine. I just need to put it in the groove on the flyer and then guide it into the groove on the drive wheel. And I'm going to go over anatomy of this wheel here in a minute. Just get the drive band into place first, and then your wheel is set up and you can start to treadle. So I'll go over the wheel anatomy just so you know what the different parts are called. So first off, the largest part on our wheel is the drive wheel, and that is the main portion of a spinning wheel. It's the largest piece. It has the spokes within it, and it attaches to the center post for this wheel. The Kromski Sonata that I'm showing you here is a castle style wheel, which means that the drive wheel is centralized and there are one, or in this case two, treadles that you pedal to create the spin in your wheel. So let's start now at the base because we're talking about treadles. Those are the 2 foot pedals at the bottom of your wheel that you push up and down to be able to cause the wheel to spin. This is a double treadle, meaning that there are 2 treadles that you work. There's also the frame for the base that the treadles are put in. That's the structure that holds the wheel upright and holds the treadles in place. This treadle has 2 footmen. These are the pieces that rotate and connect to the treadles to cause the drive wheel and the rest of the wheel mechanism to spin. So those are both called footmen. Then we've already talked about the drive wheel. Next up, we have the drive band. In my case, that's an acrylic plastic drive band that is inserted into the flyer and the drive wheel. From there, you have the mother of all, which we talked about earlier. That's this piece, U-shaped piece that houses the flyer and the bobbin, which leads us to the flyer, which is the piece that the drive band attaches to. It houses the bobbin. It has hooks that you lead your yarn onto the bobbin through, and it is what causes the twist because the whole lower portion of the spinning wheel is there so that you can start or cause spin in your flyer, which creates twist in your yarn. Therefore, you end up with yarn. So the flyer is kind of the workhorse of your spinning wheel while you are doing the treadling and the drive wheel is causing the mechanism to rotate. The flyer is what's putting the twist into your yarn. And then your bobbin is what houses the finished yarn or the twisted fibers. And so you build up a stock of twisted fibers onto your bobbins, and that is this piece here. Then we have the break band or the tension band, which is the piece we attach here. It's the twine that goes over the bobbin to hold the bobbin still while you're spinning. It comes along the mother of all, and then you have your Scotch tension knob here on the side to adjust so that you can slightly adjust the tension and change how fast or how hard the flyer is pulling on your yarn and therefore filling your bobbin. Another great feature of this spinning wheel is the built-in Lazy Kate. I showed you that earlier when we were setting it up. That is a great way to store extra bobbins if you're going to be storing your Sonata wheel set up. But if you are packing this away or you're going to be taking it on a trip and utilizing the backpack, then you are going to want to take those bobbins off and store the pegs in the backpack for traveling purposes. The backpack does have really nice pockets for the pegs and for the bobbins on the outside of the bag, so it has great storage for those things. You just won't want to pack those up within the wheel for travel purposes. As you're working with your Kromski Sonata or really any spinning wheel, you're going to want to use spinning wheel oil to lubricate things and make sure that everything's functioning properly and not rubbing weirdly, because that makes a sound and it gets very irritating when you're spinning, and it can start to ruin your wheel. So the Kromski comes with this nice little bottle of oil, and if yours didn't, you can get spinning wheel oil from Kromski or other spinning wheel supplier. You'll take off the little cover on the end, and you can keep this or not depending on how neatly and nicely you're going to store this. And now there are a few places that Kromski suggests that you put the oil to make sure that your wheel is maintained thoroughly. So first I want to show where the oil goes in the flyer and the bobbin section, because this is probably one of the areas that will make the most squeaking noises. First off, there's a piece of leather right in here at the front. So if I tilt this backwards, there's some leather right in there. I'm going to come in and squeeze my little oil pen so that I can get some oil on that leather piece, and it will seep through. So you don't need a ton, just gently apply that. So then I'm going, at the front of the mother of all, I'm going to put a little oil to the inside of that leather against the plastic piece so that has nice movement. And then you can come in here and put some oil right along the orifice hole so that that moves around smoothly against the plastic as well. And then you're going to want to slide the bobbin one way, and in this crevice there's a space here. So that is this space right in here, Then if we slide this over this space right here, you have the spot where the bobbin is touching the metal rod, and then you have the spot where the metal is touching the plastic. We're going to put a little bit of oil there as well. Kind of rotate this around to get this, the flyer around to get that spread around a bit. And then next, we're going to put a little bit of oil along the footman. So right in this space where the footman metal and wood connect, we'll slide that away. Do a little bit of oil, kind of move that around, move your wheel around a bit to get that to shift. And then you may want to come in and put a little bit of oil on your knobs, especially if you're going to be moving them and packing your wheel up often. You'll put one into this knob right here, and then a little bit of oil on this knob right here. I'm not going to do that right now because it's already tightened, but you can put oil in those places to ensure that these, this one here, rotates smoothly. Just be aware that when you unscrew this and take this out, if it does have oil on it, it's probably going to blacken, and so you can get oil residue on your hands or your fiber if you're not careful. If you're using your spinning wheel often, it's a good rule of thumb to add a little bit of oil each time you sit down to use your wheel. If you're not using it for long lengths of time, every 3 to 4 times that you sit down is going to be sufficient. You can also start to spin, and if you start to hear squeaks, add oil to ensure that those squeaks go away and that everything's working properly. For the knobs that hold the wheel together, you don't need to oil those very often unless you start to notice that as you're twisting them or working with them, they're becoming squeaky or not working as easily as they did originally. So now I'd like to go over how to get started with spinning on the Kromski Sonata wheel. If you're first starting out in spinning, you're going to want a leader yarn to get your bobbin set up so that you can start to spin. This makes it a lot easier to attach wool to the bobbin and start to spin. So grab a piece of yarn that's about 24 to 36 inches long. I just have some cotton, sugar, and cream yarn that I happen to have in the studio. And then you're going to need some fiber. And choosing fiber is like walking into a candy shop and not being able to decide what sweet you want, assuming you're a sweets person. If you're a salty person, just apply the metaphor to salty things. Fiber comes in lots of different colors, lots of different textures, and it can be quite overwhelming, especially if you're new to spinning. So one thing I will say, if you're starting out, a great fiber to begin with is a Coriadale. And I have linked in the description below some links to some Coriadales in natural colors as well as some dyed options if you want to start with a colorful yarn. The reason I suggest starting out with a Coriadale is because the fibers are a little bit coarser, and so as you're drafting, when I show you how to get started, you're going to be pulling fibers out of a bundle of wool like this wool roving here. This is a finer fiber than I am suggesting you start out with. This is merino, but it comes in these strips of fiber called roving. The finer the fiber, the more slippery the roving is going to be, or fibers are going to be once you're drafting. If they're a little bit coarser, they're not going to pull out quite as fast, and so you'll have a little bit more time to control what you're doing, which is really helpful when you're first starting out, because spinning, you're going to be treadling, you're going to be drafting, you're going to be watching the tension, managing the wool. There's a lot going on. Avoiding fighting slippery fibers by using a slightly coarser fiber will make the process of learning the wheel a lot less stressful. So to get started on your wheel, you're going to want that little bit of fiber, and Coriadale is what I would suggest you start out with. You'll need about 24 inches of some sort of scrap yarn, preferably not a bulky weight, but something that's pretty dense is useful. And then you want your spinning wheel hook. This is so that we can slide this into the hole at the beginning of the mother of all and catch the leader yarn and start to spin. Set the fiber aside as well and grab your leader yarn. And the first thing we're going to do is send one end around the bobbin and tie this onto the bobbin using a square knot. And it's right over left, left over right. Attach that to the bobbin. So here's what the wheel looks like right now. We have the leader yarn attached right up here. It's sent through the hooks, through the orifice here, and out the end orifice on the end of the mother of all. Okay, now you're going to create a little loop in the end of your leader yarn and do an overhand knot to tie that in place. So you just tied a little loop in the end of your leader yarn, like so. Now if you want to practice treadling while holding this yarn, you can start to treadle and hold the yarn in one hand, and it's going to add twist into your yarn, which you'll need to take out in order to not have it totally get too crimpy on you. I'm going to go through the beginning steps of starting to spin on this wheel fairly quickly. I have a full tutorial on how to get started with spinning, kind of breaking down the steps a little bit more. You can check that out here in the little I or in the description below. But to set up this wheel, you're going to be filling these hooks with the leader yarn until you have a little mound of yarn on your bobbin, and then you're going to move the leader yarn, or at that point it will be your spun yarn, down the length of the hook so that the position or the hook that your yarn is on moves towards you. And then once that starts to fill up on the bobbin, you're going to move it away from you. So you're kind of going back and forth, filling up the bobbin as you go. I have my leader yarn coming out of the orifice here. I'm going to start to spin this onto the wheel. And you may need to do this by coming in and tightening the yarn up on the bobbin so that it loops around. When you start spinning, you're going to choose a direction that your wheel spins in and maintain that direction as you work. What's going on here? So you'll either rotate your wheel clockwise or counterclockwise as you spin. So I've tightened up my yarn on my bobbin so I just have a little end here, and I'm going to be rotating clockwise on my wheel. So I'm pedaling and rotating the wheel clockwise. Now I need to tighten my Scotch tension until I start to feel some pull on the yarn. Once you're ready to add the fiber, you're going to take the loop that you put in the end of your leader yarn, send some fiber through that loop, like so, and then start adding twists by treadling and allowing twists to enter the yarn. Now my tension is really off because I have some wonky tension there, so I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment to try to get this yarn to enter my bobbin. And you want to adjust the tension until you have just enough that it's pulling the fiber onto your wheel, but not so much that when you loosen up on your yarn you end up with corkscrews in your fiber or in the yarn that you just spun. So once you start to feel like you have a nice tension on your wheel, you can begin to draft and pull the fibers out of your roving and spin, and it will start to fill your bobbin with spun yarn. So you'll see here I have some spun yarn starting to fill my bobbin. Once I have a nice mound here, I would move this yarn over to one loop, one hook further towards me, and continue to move once I have a layer in that space, and continue that direction towards me and then back away from me as I fill the bobbin. Something that I forgot to mention earlier is that on the flyer there are two grooves for the drive band to fit in. There's a smaller groove and there's a slightly wider groove, and this will just adjust the ratio of your wheel slightly. So if you go into the smaller groove, you're going to end up with more rotations per turn of the drive wheel, which means that you're adding more twist more quickly. If you adjust the drive band to the larger groove on the flyer, then the number of rotations of the drive wheel will be slightly less, and you'll end up with slightly less twist per rotation of the drive wheel. So you can kind of play around with that and see which one feels more comfortable. It also will impact how much tension you'll need on your Scotch tension knob to tighten or loosen it up. To give you an idea of where to start as far as the Scotch tension goes, you want to have this band slightly loose so that it's holding the bobbin snugly but not super tightly, and you don't want a whole lot of pull on the spring. For mine right now, it's actually, there's no pull on the spring. It's moving around quite a bit when I touch the tension, but I'm ending up with enough twist to pull the yarn in and get some nice twist in my single here. If you tighten too much, you're going to end up with little corkscrews in your yarn and it's going to be too tight. If you loosen up too much, it's not going to pull it onto the bobbin, and then you'll end up spinning and it won't go anywhere. So kind of find a balance between the two of those. To start out with, put your drive band in the larger groove. This is a good setup to begin with, and then once you feel comfortable starting to spin, you can alternate between the two to experiment with different ratios. We've set up the wheel, we've set up some spinning on the wheel, and now let's say you wanted to pack this up and take this on a trip or carry it around or just store it in the backpack between uses so that it stays safe and doesn't get beat up in your living space. Let's go over how to break your wheel down and insert it into the backpack so that it's good for storage or traveling. Now, Kromski in their handbook for the Sonata has some instructions on how to kind of break this down so that you can put it into your backpack nicely and neatly. So I want to go over those and show you how to do that process. So in order to pack this away, I'm first going to take the extra bobbins off, and these can get stored into the pocket of the wheel. And I'm also going to remove the pegs and rotate that bar so that it sits inside the wheel. And then we're going to lift off the drive band, loosen the peg that holds the mother of all in place. We're going to rotate this off and set this aside. And then you can reinsert this knob so that we don't lose it and just put it into place, tighten it up a little bit. And now there's the knob that we inserted into the base of the wheel. We're going to unscrew that, take that all the way off, and now your wheel is going to kind of collapse. So we want that to lower down, and I'll lift this up so I can show you. There's a hole in the drive wheel that this inserts into, and there's a hole in the base of the treadle portion that we're going to slide and screw this through. So if you send this through and find that hole, these two match up, the wheel and the base. Tighten that up so that you can carry this around without the wheel flopping around. That keeps it more secure and you can fit it into the backpack a little easier. Now I'm going to take the drive band and get it into the wheel so that it's not hanging out. And now if you prop this up like so, we can insert the mother of all into the base, or where the framework for the treadles. There's a hole that this mother of all can slide into like so. And now it's nice and compact. Now we can open up the backpack, insert this in like so. There is a pocket for the pegs right back here at the top, so you can open that and slide those in there. Zip this up tight, and then in this lower pocket down here, we can insert our extra bobbins. Our hook, oil, nitty knotty, and your extra wool if you want to carry that in the backpack as well. Zip it all up, and now you're ready to go on your spinning adventures. I want to thank Kromski for sponsoring this video by gifting us this spinning wheel. It's been really great to work with this Sonata wheel, and it's a really great beginner wheel because it's easy to set up, it's mobile, it's not very heavy. With the backpack and all, it's only 16 pounds, so it's easy to move around, store, and work with. And once you get the wheel set up, the setup for actually spinning is really straightforward as well. You also don't need a lot of extra tools and things because it has the built-in Lazy Kate. So if you're looking for a wheel to start out with and you want something that's kind of all in one at first, this is a good wheel to begin with. I've linked a resource page in the description below. If you go to that page, we have a list of wheels, including the Sonata, as well as our favorite fibers and other spinning equipment and accessories that will help you get started in your spinning adventures. Thanks so much for joining me in this video, and thanks Kromski for sending us the Sonata wheel. I look forward to doing other videos on this wheel in the future. Until then, happy making, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.